I found my husband with my son's fiancée, but I had a truth that would change our family forever. I never thought the walls of my own home could hold so much pain. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if you, for a single second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Helen Miller. I'm 64 years old, and I live in Pasadena, California. For 42 years, I dedicated every beat of my heart to my family. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5:30, brew coffee in the kitchen I'd painted sunflower yellow myself because I believed cheerful colors brought hope into a home. The aroma of cinnamon and brown sugar would fill the house as I waited for my husband, Robert, to come down for breakfast. That March morning, like every other for 4 decades, I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth my mother had given me when I got married. My grandmother's fine china plates gleamed in the light filtering through the wrought iron windows. Everything was perfect, as always. Because I believed that if I kept the house impeccable, if I cooked with love, if I smiled even when my soul ached, my family would one day value me. Robert shuffled downstairs, his hair a mess, and that look of weary boredom that had become his permanent expression toward me. Without a good morning, without looking me in the eye, he sat down and held out his hand, waiting for me to serve him. As always, like a king waiting for his servant. "The coffee's cold," he mumbled after the first sip, though I knew it was the perfect temperature. "I'll pour you another cup, dear," I replied, swallowing the words I really wanted to say. As I heated more coffee on the old gas stove you had to light with a match because Robert never bothered to fix it, I heard his footsteps going back up the stairs. I thought he was going to the bathroom, like every morning, but something about the sound of his steps caught my attention. They were lighter, more urgent. I followed him, my bare feet silent on the wooden steps that only creaked when you didn't want them to. My heart was beating strangely, as if it knew something my mind hadn't yet processed. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I saw something that ripped the soul from my chest in a single blow. Robert was holding Sophia, our son Alex's fiancée. She, with her messy brown hair, was wearing only a sheer blouse. He, shirtless, was kissing her with a passion he hadn't shown me in years. His hands roamed her back as he whispered words I had stopped hearing so long ago. The world stopped. The air grew thick, unbreathable. My legs trembled as if the earth were shaking beneath me. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed up. I wanted to run, but my muscles wouldn't respond. I could only stand there, paralyzed, watching my 42-year marriage crumble in 30 seconds. Sophia laughed softly, that same crystalline sound I had praised when Alex introduced her to me 6 months ago. "She's perfect for him, Mom," my son had told me, his eyes shining with love. And I, foolishly, had opened my home, my heart. I had cooked for her. I had embroidered napkins with her initials for their wedding. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping that when I opened them, it would all be a nightmare. But when I opened them, they were still there. Robert was caressing her face with a tenderness, a delicacy I had begged him to show me for decades. He was calling her, my beautiful girl, my princess, the same words that were once mine when we were dating in the old park downtown. I went downstairs like a sleepwalker, my hands clutching the banister to keep from falling. In the kitchen, the coffee had boiled over onto the stove, filling the air with the bitter smell of something burning. I stood in front of the mess, watching the brown drops slide down the metal, and I felt that spill was the perfect metaphor for my life. I sat in the chair where I had eaten thousands of breakfasts, where I had planned birthdays, where I had cried in silence so many nights after arguments that always ended up being my fault. The tears came silently, falling onto the embroidered tablecloth, staining the flowers my mother had stitched with so much love. How long had this been going on? Since when had Robert and Sophia? The questions swarmed in my mind like angry bees. I remembered the times Sophia had come over to learn how to cook, the evenings Robert came home late from the office, the glances that now took on a completely different meaning. The sound of the shower upstairs pulled me from my thoughts. Soon they would come down, pretend everything was normal, and I would have to act as if I hadn't seen a thing, as if my world hadn't split in two. As if I could go on living in this house where every corner now screamed betrayal. I stood up, trembling, cleaned up the spilled coffee, and made more. Because that's what Helen Miller had done her whole life. Clean up messes, smile through the pain, keep the family together even as it was bleeding from the inside. But as I put the new coffee pot on the stove, something inside me began to shift. A spark of rage, small but real, ignited in my chest. Because for the first time in 42 years, I asked myself, what about me? When was the last time anyone in this house worried about Helen? The coffee began to brew, but I was no longer thinking about serving it. I was thinking about the letter I kept in my sewing box, the one I had never shown anyone, the letter that could change everything. Because Robert and Sophia didn't know that I had secrets too, secrets that could destroy their perfect little game. That afternoon, while Robert was taking his nap and Sophia had supposedly gone out to shop for her wedding dress, I locked myself in my sewing room. Among spools of colored thread and fabric scraps, I kept a shoebox lined with pink tissue paper. Inside was the proof of 42 years of sacrifices that no one remembered. Hospital bills from when Robert had his heart attack 15 years ago. I had sold my gold earrings, the only ones I had, to pay the part insurance didn't cover. Tuition receipts from Alex's private university, from when Robert lost his job and I cleaned houses in the early mornings for 3 years, so our son wouldn't have to drop out of his engineering program. Birthday photographs where I was always in the background serving, always serving, while they smiled for the camera. I picked up a trembling photo from the day we opened the hardware store. Robert was cutting the red ribbon, smiling, proud. But he wasn't in the photo where I was hauling bags of cement under the August sun because we couldn't afford to hire help, nor in the picture where I was painting the walls at 2 a.m. because he said hiring painters was throwing money away. The hardware store, our business, or rather, my business, because although it bore Robert's name, I had provided the land. The same land my father left me with his last words. Helen, this is yours. Don't ever let anyone take it from you. But I, in love and trusting, had put it in both our names. We're a family, Robert had said. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. A lie. It had all been a lie. I remembered the night Alex was born. Robert was at a bar with his buddies celebrating becoming a dad, while I was hemorrhaging at the County General Hospital. My sister Rose later told me she found him drunk, with his arm around a waitress, complaining that he wasn't free anymore. When he arrived at the hospital the next day, smelling of alcohol and cheap perfume, all the relatives said, "What an emotional father. Look how he cried with joy." I never told them the truth. I never told them those were tears of guilt, not love. I pulled out another photo, the day Alex graduated with his engineering degree. There was Robert, chest puffed out, accepting congratulations as if he had paid for the university. No one remembered me getting up at 4 a.m. to make tamales to sell at the entrance of the Pasadena Farmers Market. That my hands were covered in calluses from mixing dough for years. That Robert would complain because I came home tired and wasn't in the mood for him. "It's your duty to keep your husband happy," my mother-in-law would say when I told her my problems. "Men need to feel important. If he looks for affection elsewhere, you should ask yourself what you're doing wrong." It was always my fault. If Robert came home in a bad mood, it was because dinner was cold. If he yelled, it was because the house was messy. If he ignored me, it was because I didn't fix myself up enough. The sound of the front door pulled me from my memories. Voices in the living room. Robert and Sophia had come back together. My heart raced. How could they be so brazen, so cruel? "Honey, did you get the beers?" I heard Robert say. "Yes, my love. Your favorite kind?" Sophia replied with that sweet voice she used with me when she needed something. "My love." That's what he used to call me when we were dating. Now those words were for her. I walked down the stairs trying to control the trembling in my legs. I found them in the living room, sitting very close on the couch I had reupholstered 3 times, because Robert didn't want to buy a new one. Her head was resting on his shoulder. He was stroking her hair. When they saw me, they jumped apart like kids caught doing something wrong. "Oh, Mrs. Miller, you scared me," Sophia said, smoothing her blouse. "We didn't hear you come down." "I was in my room," I replied in the most normal voice I could manage. "Did you find a dress?" Robert looked at me with those eyes that had learned to lie with mastery. Sophia had to help me at the store. The cash register broke, and since Alex wasn't here, more lies. The cash register was working perfectly yesterday when I brought them lunch. And where is my son? I asked. He's in Chicago for that company training. He gets back Friday, Sophia said, unable to meet my gaze. That's why I came to stay, so you wouldn't be lonely, to stay with us. As if I were a decrepit old woman who needed company. As if Robert were a poor, abandoned widower. How thoughtful of you, dear, I said. And the word dear tasted like poison in my mouth. That night I made pot roast, Robert's favorite dish. I spent 3 hours in the kitchen, searing the meat, preparing the gravy, chopping vegetables. I set the table with the good china, lit candles, and put on the blue dress he had given me for our 20th anniversary. When I called them to dinner, they came in laughing about something they'd seen on TV. They sat next to each other, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Robert took the first bite. It's too salty, he said without looking at me. Didn't you taste it before serving? Sophia put on a look of second-hand embarrassment. Oh, don't worry, Mr. Miller. I like it this way. It's delicious, Mrs. Miller. But she didn't eat even half her plate. After dinner, they went to the living room to watch a movie. I stayed behind to wash dishes, listening to their laughter from the kitchen. By the time I finished, they had already gone to bed. Robert didn't even say goodnight. That night, lying on my side of the marital bed, I heard Robert's footsteps in the hallway. He left our room and walked toward the guest room, where Sophia was staying. The steps stopped in front of her door. I heard the soft click of the handle turning. I covered my face with my pillow so I wouldn't scream. The next day, as we ate breakfast in silence, Robert announced, Helen, Sophia is going to stay a few more days. Alex asked her to look after us while he's away. Look after us? I asked. Are we invalids? Don't be ridiculous, it's just, we're getting older. It's good to have someone young in the house. Someone young. Someone who wasn't me, the burdensome 64-year-old woman. Sophia smiled from behind her coffee mug. Don't you worry, Mrs. Miller. I'll help you with everything. In fact, why don't you rest today? I'll make lunch. Rest. As if they were doing me a favor. As if cooking in my own kitchen was a burden I needed to be freed from. But I agreed. I went for a walk through the streets of Pasadena, past the farmer's market where I had bought vegetables for decades, past the church where I got married believing in forever. Everything looked the same, but I felt like a stranger in my own life. When I returned, the house smelled of burnt food. I found the kitchen in a disaster and Sophia crying. I burned everything, Mrs. Miller. I can't cook like you. Robert was consoling her, stroking her back. Don't worry, my love. Helen can whip something up quickly. My love. He wasn't even bothering to hide it in front of me anymore. As I made quesadillas to salvage the meal, I heard them whispering in the living room. Stray words reached my ears. Soon. Plans. Wait a little longer. That night, I added a new piece of evidence to my shoebox. The grocery store receipt where Robert had bought flowers. Flowers that never reached my hands, but that I saw wilting in Sophia's room. And for the first time in 42 years, I left the dirty dishes in the sink and went to bed. Because something inside me had begun to awaken. Something that had to do with that letter in my sewing box, and with the truth that no one in this house knew. The following days became a silent nightmare where I was the invisible protagonist of my own tragedy. Sophia had installed herself in my house as if she owned it, and Robert treated her with a deference he had never shown me. Not even in our best moments. One morning, while making coffee in the kitchen, I heard laughter coming from the sewing room. My personal sanctuary, the only space where I had been truly happy, was being invaded. I went upstairs with a racing heart and found Sophia showing Robert my needlework, my decades-long projects. Look, honey, how old-fashioned this is, she was saying, holding up the tablecloth I had embroidered for our first anniversary. Nobody uses this stuff anymore. It's so out of style. Robert nodded, as if my years of work were worthless. Helen was always very traditional, he said, in a tone that turned my dedication into something shameful. I cleared my throat from the doorway. They turned around, startled. May I ask what you're doing in my room? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry. Sophia said with that fake smile I knew so well. "I was just showing Robert how talented you are. Though, of course, these things are a bit dated now, aren't they?" Robert didn't defend me. He just shrugged and left the room as if my pain didn't exist. That afternoon, I decided to visit my sister Rose, who lived in a small condo over in Glendale. I needed to talk to someone, to vent before I went crazy. Rose welcomed me into her small apartment, filled with plants and photos of her grandchildren. As she made chamomile tea, I told her everything. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every sleepless night. "Helen, are you sure about what you saw?" Rose asked, frowning. "Sometimes when we're stressed, we can misinterpret things. I saw them kissing in my bed, Rose. There's nothing to misinterpret. But Robert, after all these years, he can't be that cruel." My own sister doubted me. The one person in the world I thought would understand me, who would believe me without question. "You know what?" Rose continued. "Maybe you should talk to him. Communication is important in a marriage. And about Sophia, well, young women can be very affectionate sometimes. It doesn't have to mean anything." I returned home with my soul even more broken than when I left. Not even my sister believed me. In her mind, I was the paranoid wife, the jealous woman seeing betrayal where there was none. When I arrived, I found the house empty and a note on the kitchen table. "Helen, we went to look at some things for the wedding. Back tonight, Robert." For the wedding. My son's wedding to the woman who was sleeping with my husband. I sat in my kitchen chair and cried until I had no tears left. I cried for the 42 lost years, for the youth I sacrificed, for the dreams I buried to build a family that now trampled me like an annoying insect. When the tears ran out, something strange happened. A cold calm washed over me. I stood up, went to my sewing room, and took out the shoebox. But this time, I wasn't looking for painful memories. I was looking for the letter that had arrived 6 months ago, addressed to me. The letter I had hidden because its contents could destroy everything. The letter from Mr. Davis, my father's attorney. I unfolded it with trembling hands. The words were still there, printed on letterhead. "Dear Mrs. Helen Miller, after an exhaustive review of the county records, we have discovered an error in the probating of your father's estate, Mr. Aurelio Miller. The parcel of land where the hardware store is currently located, as well as the house where you reside, were recorded incorrectly. According to the original deed documents, both properties are titled solely in your name, with no co-owners. Your husband Robert was never granted legal title to said properties." The letter went on with legal technicalities, but the important part was clear. Robert owned nothing. The hardware store he was so proud of, the house where he mistreated me, it was all mine. Only mine. For years I had believed we were co-owners because that's what Robert had told me when we married. "We have to put it in both our names, my love. We're a family." And I, in love and trusting, had signed whatever he put in front of me. But it seemed the title company had made a mistake and only recorded my name. Robert had been living a lie for decades. They arrived home after 11 that night, laughing and talking in low voices. I was in the living room, waiting. The letter was tucked into the pocket of my robe against my chest, like a powerful talisman. "How was your day?" Robert asked with no real interest, as Sophia went straight upstairs to her room. "Fine," I replied. "And yours? Did you buy anything nice for the wedding?" Robert poured himself a glass of water, avoiding my gaze. "We just looked at a few things. Sophia has very good taste." "I'm sure she does," I said, and something in my tone made him look at me strangely. That night, I once again heard the footsteps in the hall. But this time, I didn't cover my face with a pillow. This time, I got up and walked silently to the door of the guest room. I put my ear to the wood and heard everything. Sophia's moans, Robert's dirty words, the promises he made about when Helen is out of the way, about the life we'll have together. "Soon, my love," Robert whispered. "When Alex marries you, we can be together without hiding. Helen will have to accept it." "And if she doesn't?" Sophia asked. "Then we'll find a way for her to leave. This house is too big for one woman alone. Maybe she needs to be somewhere more appropriate for her age. A place appropriate for my age. A nursing home. They wanted to put me in a nursing home to take my house, my business, my life. I went back to my room shaking, but not with fear, with rage. A cold, calculating rage I had never felt before. The next day, while they slept in after their night of passion, I left early for Mr. Davis's office. His office was in an old craftsman building in Old Town Pasadena, filled with law books and the smell of old paper that characterizes places where important secrets are kept. Mrs. Miller, the attorney, an older man with a white mustache, greeted me. "I'm so glad to see you. Did you receive my letter?" "Yes, Mr. Davis. That's why I'm here. I need to understand exactly what my rights are." For 2 hours, the lawyer explained the legal situation, the house, the hardware store property, even the profits from the business in recent years. It was all legally mine. Robert had been unknowingly just a manager. "But Mr. Davis?" I asked. "What about the marriage? Isn't he entitled to half for being my husband?" "Mrs. Miller, under California law, property acquired by gift or inheritance is considered separate property. Your husband has no legal claim to the properties you inherited from your father." Separate property. Another lie from Robert. He had told me everything we had was community property. I left the office with copies of all the documents in my purse. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not a forced smile to please others, but a real smile from a woman who had just discovered she had more power than she ever imagined. That afternoon, when I got home, I found them in the living room planning the wedding. They had magazines spread out on the coffee table, pointing at dresses and floral arrangements. "Oh, Mrs. Miller," Sophia said without looking up, "could you make us some coffee? We have a lot to plan. Could you make us?" As if I were their employee. "Of course, dear," I replied sweetly. "Right away." As I made the coffee, I heard them talking about the wedding date, the honeymoon, about the plans they had for when we all lived together in the house. I served the coffee in the porcelain cups my grandmother had left me. I sat down with them, smiling placidly. "You know what?" I said in a calm voice. "I have some news for you." Robert and Sophia looked at me expectantly. I received a very interesting letter from my father's attorney. Sophia's smile faded slightly. Robert frowned. "What kind of letter?" he asked. "Oh, just some boring legal matters," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "Things about properties and deeds. Nothing important. But it was important. Very important. And soon, very soon, they would know it." On Friday afternoon, Alex returned from Chicago. My son, my only son, the boy I had held in my arms for entire nights when he had a fever, the young man for whom I had sacrificed my dreams to give him an education. He walked into the house with his suitcase and that smile he inherited from me, the one that used to light up my darkest days. "Mom!" he yelled from the doorway. "Where's my favorite fiancé?" Sophia ran down the stairs like a lovesick teenager, threw herself into his arms, and kissed him with a passion that turned my stomach. Because I knew where those lips had been the previous nights, in what other mouth they had whispered words of love. "I missed you so much, my love," Sophia said, clinging to his neck. "And I missed you, beautiful. Did my parents behave themselves with you?" Robert appeared from the living room, clapping Alex on the back with that masculine camaraderie he loved to fake. "Your fiancée is a treasure, son. She took great care of us. Took care of us. As if we were two helpless old people instead of a perfectly capable couple in their 60s. That night, I made a traditional pot roast, Alex's favorite dish since he was a child. I spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen, searing the meat, preparing the gravy, chopping vegetables with the same love I had put into thousands of meals during his childhood. Robert and Sophia were in the living room, watching TV, feigning normalcy with a shamelessness that took my breath away. When I called them to dinner, the three of them came in together, like a happy family. Alex sat in his usual spot, Robert at the head of the table, and Sophia sat in my seat, in the chair where I had sat for 42 years, from which I had served thousands of meals, where I had comforted my son when he came home sad from school. "Sophia, that's Mom's seat," Alex said, surprised. "Oh, it doesn't matter," Robert intervened quickly. "Helen can sit anywhere. Don't be so formal." I stood there, holding the pot roast, feeling my place at the table, my place in the family, being usurped before my eyes. Alex looked at me, waiting for me to say something, but I just smiled and sat in a side chair, like a guest in my own home. During dinner, I listened to my son talk about his business trip, about his company's new projects, about his future plans. He spoke with enthusiasm, and I watched him, captivated as always, proud of his intelligence, his success. But when he mentioned something about buying a bigger house after the wedding, Robert and Sophia exchanged a look that did not go unnoticed. "A bigger house?" I asked. "Aren't you going to live here?" "Oh, Mom, this house is perfect," Alex said. "It's just that we were thinking, well, when we have kids—" "Of course you're going to live here," Robert interrupted. "This house belongs to the family. There's room for everyone." Sophia smiled sweetly. "Yes, Mrs. Miller. We want to be close to you, to take care of you when you're older." Older. As if I were already a burden to be endured. After dinner, while I was washing the dishes, I heard them in the living room making wedding plans. Alex had brought catalogs from a reception hall in Beverly Hills. They were talking about a lavish celebration. When he mentioned the cost, a sum that represented several years of my savings, Robert said casually, "Don't worry, son. Your mother and I will take care of it." Your mother and I. As if we were equal partners in this decision. As if he didn't know the money would come from my savings account, from the dollars I had saved selling tamales and cleaning houses. "Are you sure, Dad? It's a lot of money," Alex said. "Of course I'm sure. It's my only son's wedding. Helen will be happy to pitch in, right, dear?" From the kitchen, I felt his eyes on me, waiting for my answer. Waiting for me to nod like the good, obedient wife I had always been. "Of course," I said in a calm voice. "Anything for my son?" But in my mind, I was calculating. The wedding they were planning would cost everything I had saved and more. It would leave me with no resources, completely dependent on Robert, completely vulnerable. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stayed in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, looking out the window at the small garden I had cultivated for years. The bougainvillea I had planted when Alex was a boy now covered the back fence, filling the yard with purple flowers that bloomed even in adversity, just as I should. I heard footsteps in the upstairs hallway, the furtive steps I knew so well. Robert leaving our room, walking towards the guest room. But tonight was different. Tonight, I also heard the door to Alex's room open. My heart stopped. Had my son discovered the betrayal? Had he seen his father heading to his fiancée's room? I went upstairs silently, my bare feet on the cold wood. In the upstairs hallway, the door to Alex's room was slightly ajar. I crept closer and looked through the crack. My son was standing in the doorway of the guest room, motionless, looking inside. I couldn't see his expression from where I stood, but his rigid posture told me everything. He had seen it. He had seen his father in bed with his fiancée. For a moment, I thought he would scream, that there would be a scandal, that the truth would finally come out. But Alex just stood there for several minutes that felt like an eternity. Then slowly, he turned around and went back to his room, closing the door without a sound. There were no shouts, no confrontation, just silence. The next morning at breakfast, Alex acted as if nothing had happened. He joked with Robert, kissed Sophia, and asked me for more coffee with the same casualness as always. But I could see something different in his eyes, a coldness that hadn't been there before. "I have to go to the office for a few hours," he announced after breakfast. "Things to catch up on from the trip." "I'll go with you," Sophia said immediately. "We can check on the reception hall." "No," Alex replied with a firmness that surprised us all. "I'd rather go alone. I need to focus." Sophia pouted like a scolded child but didn't press the issue. After Alex left, Robert and Sophia visibly relaxed. It was as if they had been performing for an audience and could now be themselves. They sat together on the couch, Robert stroking her leg while she pretended to read a magazine. "You know what?" Robert said suddenly. "We should go out. Go downtown. Walk around Pasadena. Like when we were dating." He meant when they were dating, not when Robert and I were dating. He had completely erased our history, our memories, as if they had never existed. "What about Helen?" Sophia asked with false concern. "Helen will be fine here. She likes the house. Besides, she needs to rest." She needs to rest. as if I were terminally ill instead of a perfectly healthy woman who had worked her entire life. They left like teenagers skipping class, laughing and holding hands. From the living room window, I watched them walk down the street. Robert with a youthful stride he only showed when he was with her. Sophia clinging to his arm like a 15-year-old with her first boyfriend. When they disappeared from view, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had memorized. "Mr. Davis," I said when he answered. "This is Helen Miller. I need to see you urgently." That afternoon, sitting in the lawyer's office, I told him everything. The betrayal, the wedding plans, the way they wanted to use my savings. The lawyer listened with the patience of someone who has seen every possible human cruelty. "Mrs. Miller," he said when I finished, "legally, you hold all the power. You can throw them out of the house tomorrow if you wish. You can change the locks, cut off the utilities, even report your husband for trespassing." "And my son?" I asked. "And the wedding? Your son is an adult. He will make his own decisions. As for the wedding, the money is yours. No one can force you to spend it." I returned home with the documents in my purse and a decision in my heart. But when I arrived, I found Alex waiting for me in the living room, with an expression I had never seen before. "Mom," he said in a tense voice, "we need to talk." My heart sped up. Had he decided to face the truth? Had he come to defend his mother? "Tell me, son. It's about the wedding. About the money." "What about the money?" Alex took a deep breath. "Mom, I think you should give us the money now. Deposit it into my account. So I can manage the expenses directly." The world stopped. My son, my only son, hadn't come to defend me. He had come to dispossess me. "Why?" I whispered. "Well, Dad says that at your age, managing that much money can be confusing. It's better if I handle it." At my age. Confusing. The same words Robert used to justify treating me as if I were senile. "Alex," I said slowly, "do you think I'm losing my mind?" My son avoided my gaze. "No, Mom, but, well, you're not as young as you used to be. And the money is important. We don't want you to make any mistakes." In that moment, seeing my son repeat his father's words, I understood that I had lost everything. Not just my husband, my son too. But I had the documents in my purse. And for the first time in my life, I had the power to choose. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching Robert breathe peacefully beside me, as if he hadn't destroyed 42 years of marriage, as if he hadn't made me a stranger in my own home. His snores filled the early morning silence, the same sound I had heard for decades, but which I now found unbearable. At 5 in the morning, I got up with a determination I had never felt before. I dressed silently, took my purse with the documents from Mr. Davis, and left the house without waking anyone. The streets of Pasadena were empty, with just a few early workers heading for bus stops and food truck vendors setting up on the corners. I arrived at the bank just as the doors were opening. The teller, a young woman with her hair in a neat bun and a crisp uniform, greeted me with the professional smile of someone not yet worn down by the human miseries seen from behind a counter. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I want to close my savings account," I said in a firm voice. "Close it? Are you sure? It's a very old account." "Completely sure." As the teller typed on her computer, I thought about all the years it had taken me to save that money. Every dollar had been a small victory. The change I had left over from the market, the tips people gave me when I sold tamales, the crumpled bills I hid in empty coffee jars so Robert wouldn't see them. It was my money, earned with my hands, saved through my sacrifices. "Ma'am, I see the account has recent activity authorized by Mr. Robert Miller. Does he know you're closing it?" "He doesn't need to know. Check the documents. That account is solely in my name." The teller checked again, frowned, and finally nodded. "You're right. How would you like to receive the funds?" "In cash." I left the bank with an envelope full of bills in my purse. For the first time in months, I genuinely smiled. It was a small smile, but it was mine. On the way home, I stopped at the stationery store where I'd known the owner, Mr. Thompson, for 20 years. I bought a new notebook, hardcover with blank white pages. On the first page, I wrote, "Helen Miller, My New Life, March 2024. When I got home, it was almost 9. Robert was in the kitchen, pouring coffee into the mugs I always left ready. Sophia was sitting in my chair, disheveled and in a robe, as if she owned the place. "Where have you been so early?" Robert asked with the tone of a husband who had the right to control my movements. "Taking care of some business," I replied calmly. "What business?" he insisted. For the first time in 42 years, I didn't give him an explanation. "My business." Robert looked at me puzzled. Sophia looked up from her phone, alert. "Helen, I don't understand why you're being so mysterious," Robert said with irritation. "We're your family. We have a right to know." "We have a right." As if he and Sophia were a unit and I was the intruder. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" "You don't have a right to know everything I do. You're not entitled to know where I go or what I do with my time." Sophia and Robert exchanged glances. It was the first time they had ever heard me say the word no without an apology, without an explanation, without begging for forgiveness. "Mom, are you okay?" Alex had appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for work. "You seem different." "I'm perfectly fine, son. Better than ever." "Have you thought about what we talked about yesterday?" Alex asked, referring to the money. "We could go to the bank this afternoon." I took the new notebook from my purse and placed it on the table. "Son, I did a lot of thinking last night, and I've decided I'm not paying for your wedding." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "What do you mean you're not paying for the wedding?" Alex stammered. "Exactly that. I'm not paying for the wedding." Robert shot up from his chair, spilling coffee on the table. "Helen, you can't be serious. It's your son's wedding. And he's a grown man with an excellent job. He can pay for his own wedding. But we had an agreement." "You had an agreement," I interrupted him. "No one asked my opinion. No one asked me if I wanted to spend my entire life savings on a party." Sophia turned pale. Her plans for a lavish wedding were vanishing before her eyes. "Mrs. Miller, but we were counting on that money. We already put a deposit on the hall. We paid for the dress. Those are your problems, not mine." Alex looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. "Mom, what's wrong with you? You've always been so generous with the family. Why are you acting so selfish now?" Selfish. After 42 years of sacrifice, after selling my earrings to pay for hospital bills, after cleaning houses to pay for his college, after never buying a single thing for myself, I was the selfish one. "You know what, Alex? You're right. I'm going to be selfish for the first time in my life." I opened the notebook to the first page and wrote as I spoke. Day 1 of being selfish. I am not paying for my son's wedding because he can pay for it with his own money. Robert was red with rage. "Helen, enough with the theatrics. Stop making a fool of yourself." "I've been playing the fool for 42 years, Robert. Pretending I didn't see your contempt. Pretending your words didn't hurt me. Pretending we were happy when you didn't love me anymore." "What are you talking about? Of course I love you." "Oh, really? When was the last time you said something nice to me? When was the last time you treated me like your wife and not your maid?" Robert opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out, because the truth was, he couldn't remember. I wrote in the notebook, "Robert can't remember the last time he treated me with love." "That's enough," Sophia shouted, losing her composure for the first time. "She's crazy. She can't do this to us." I looked at her steadily. This young woman who had come into my home as my son's fiancée and had become my husband's lover. "Do what to you exactly? Not give you my money? Not serve as your free housekeeper?" "You're his mother," Sophia shrieked. "It's your obligation." "My obligation was to raise him, educate him, and give him love. I've already done that. He's an adult now." I stood up from the table, taking my notebook and my purse. "Where are you going?" Robert asked. "Out for breakfast. To a place where no one yells at me, where no one tells me what to do with my money, where no one treats me like I'm invisible." "Helen, get back here right now." I stopped in the kitchen doorway and turned back to him. No, that word, so simple, so small, felt like the most powerful one I had ever spoken in my life. I left the house and walked to Rosie's Diner on the main square. I ordered a black coffee, a pastry, and sat at a table by the window. I took out my notebook and wrote, Day 1 of my new life. closed my savings account, said no for the first time, had breakfast alone and in peace. Robert yelled, but it didn't intimidate me. I feel strange, but good. An elderly woman at the next table smiled at me. Writing your memoirs, dear? Something like that, I replied. I'm starting a new story. It's never too late for a new beginning, she said with a knowing look. I got divorced at 70. Better late than never. I finished my breakfast slowly, savoring every sip of coffee, every crumb of pastry. For the first time in decades, no one was waiting for me to serve them. No one was yelling that their food was cold. No one was treating me like I was invisible. When I got home, I found Robert waiting for me in the living room, looking furious. Helen, that's enough. Stop throwing a tantrum and act like a mature woman. I am acting exactly like a mature woman, Robert. One who will no longer allow herself to be mistreated. Mistreated? I have never mistreated you. I took out my notebook and wrote as I spoke. Robert believes he has never mistreated me. What are you writing in there? The truth. Everything that's happened, everything I'm feeling, everything I've kept silent about for years. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Fear that someone else might read the truths he thought were buried forever. That night, for the first time in 42 years, I didn't make dinner. I stayed in my sewing room, writing in my notebook, planning my new life. From downstairs, I could hear agitated voices, discussions between Robert, Alex, and Sophia about what to do with me, as if I were a problem to be solved. But I wasn't their problem anymore. For the first time in my life, they were going to be their own problem, and I, Helen Miller, was going to be free. The next few days felt like living on a silent battlefield. Robert, Alex, and Sophia had formed an alliance against me, whispering in corners, making phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. They ate their meals together while I was in my sewing room, planning strategies to make me see reason, as if I were an old woman with dementia. On Tuesday morning, as I drank my coffee in the kitchen, I heard Robert on the phone with someone out on the patio. Yes, doctor, my wife has been exhibiting very strange behaviors. Suddenly she's refusing to do things she's always done. No, she's not aggressive, but she's very irrational. Do you think it could be the start of some kind of dementia? Dementia. They wanted to have me declared insane. That afternoon, Robert arrived with an older man in a white coat carrying a medical bag. Dr. Ramirez, as he introduced himself, was a highly recommended specialist in geriatrics. Helen, the doctor is here to give you a general checkup, Robert said with false concern. Just to make sure you're in good health. I don't need a checkup, I replied calmly. I'm perfectly fine. Mom, please, Alex intervened. It'll just take a moment. We're worried about you. Dr. Ramirez smiled with the condescending patience doctors use with elderly patients. Mrs. Miller? It will just be a few simple questions. Do you know what day it is? It's Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Do you know where you are? In my home, in Pasadena, California. Who is the current president of the United States? Joe Biden. I answered every question with perfect clarity. The doctor seemed perplexed. Your husband mentioned you've had some behavioral changes recently. What kind of changes, doctor? Well, he says you're refusing to do things you used to do normally, that you've made impulsive financial decisions. I stood up and went to get my notebook. I came back and placed it on the table. Doctor, do you believe that a 64-year-old woman, in full command of her mental faculties, does not have the right to decide how to spend her own money? Well, of course she does, but... And do you believe she has an obligation to cook and clean for free for adults who are perfectly capable of doing it themselves? No, of course not. But I was told that you always... What I always did is no longer relevant, doctor. What's relevant is what I want to do now. Dr. Ramirez looked at Robert with an uncomfortable expression. Mr. Miller, your wife is perfectly lucid. I find no signs of cognitive decline. After the doctor left, Robert exploded. Helen? That's enough. You are destroying this family. I'm not destroying anything, Robert. I'm just stopping to hold a lie together. What lie? The lie that we're a happy family. The lie that you respect me. The lie that you love me. Robert moved toward me, his face red with rage. I've given you 42 years of my life, and I gave you 42 years of mine. But apparently that wasn't enough for you. What are you talking about? It was then I decided it was time. Time to bring the truth to light. Time to show the cards I had been holding for so long. I'm talking about Sophia, Robert. The silence that followed was deadly. Robert turned pale. Alex frowned in confusion. And Sophia, who had been pretending to read a magazine on the couch, froze. What does Sophia have to do with this? Alex asked. Ask your father, I said. My gaze locked on Robert. Ask him what he does in her room every night. Helen, Robert whispered in a threatening voice. What? Are you going to deny it? Are you going to tell me you haven't been sleeping with your son's fiancée? The magazine fell from Sophia's hands. Alex was paralyzed, looking back and forth between his father and his fiancée. Dad, Alex whispered. Tell me it's not true. Robert opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. Son, it's complicated. Complicated? Alex yelled. You're screwing my fiancé and it's complicated? Sophia got up from the couch, tears in her eyes. Alex, I can explain. Explain what? Explain that you're a slut who sleeps with my dad? Don't talk to me like that, Sophia shrieked. Your father and I fell in love. It wasn't planned. You fell in love? Alex laughed, a bitter, terrifying sound. How long have you been screwing in this house? Alex, please. Robert tried to intervene. You shut up, my son roared. Don't talk to me. Don't you dare say another word to me. Alex turned on Sophia with a fury I had never seen in him. Since when? How long have you been cheating on me? Since December, Sophia sobbed. But Alex, you're always working. You never have time for me. And that's your excuse? That I work too much to buy you the damn ring on your finger? Sophia ripped the engagement ring off and threw it on the floor. I don't want your ring. Robert truly loves me. Robert loves you, I asked with a calmness that surprised even me. Does he love you so much that he hasn't left his wife for you? Does he love you so much that he still sleeps in my bed? Robert looked at me with pure hatred. Helen, this is none of your business. It's not my business that my husband is cheating in my own house. It's not my business that he's using my bed to sleep with another woman. Enough! Alex screamed. I don't want to hear any more. My son ran out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Robert and Sophia just stood there, in the middle of the living room, like two children caught stealing candy. You see, I said quietly, the truth always comes out. Robert stepped toward me menacingly. If you think this is over, you're dead wrong. Are you threatening me, Robert? I'm warning you. This is my house, too. I have rights. That's when I pulled out the documents I had been saving. I spread them on the coffee table like a winning poker hand. Rights? What rights, Robert? This house. We built it together. Read the documents. Robert picked up the papers with trembling hands. As he read, his face transformed from anger to confusion, and from confusion to horror. This can't be true. It is true. This house is mine. The land the hardware store is on is mine. Legally, you don't own a thing. But you lied to me, Robert. You told me we were co-owners, but the property was never deeded to you. The title company recorded everything solely in my name. Sophia read over Robert's shoulder, and her face fell completely. It can't be. Robert, you said it was your house. I believed. Robert, I said with a deadly calm, I want you and Sophia out of my house. Now. Helen, you can't do this. Of course I can. And I'm going to. Where will we go? That is no longer my problem. Robert collapsed onto the couch, completely defeated. Helen, please. We can talk. There's nothing left to talk about, Robert. 42 years was enough conversation. Sophia began to sob hysterically. This can't be happening. Robert, do something. But Robert couldn't do anything. For the first time in 42 years, he had no power over me. You have until tomorrow to get out, I said. If you don't leave on your own, you'll be removed. And Alex? Robert asked desperately. Are you going to separate your son from his father? Alex is an adult. He will decide what kind of relationship he wants with you after this. I turned toward the stairs but stopped on the first step. "Oh, and Robert, leave the keys when you go." I went up to my sewing room and locked the door. For the first time in weeks, I didn't hear shouting or pleading or threats. Just the silence of a house that would soon be truly mine. I took my notebook and wrote, "Day 5 of my new life. The truth is out. Robert and Sophia are exposed. Alex knows everything. The house is legally mine. Tomorrow I start living without lies." Outside it began to rain, but for the first time in years, the rain sounded like a blessing. At dawn the next day, I heard the sound of suitcases being dragged down the stairs. From the window of my sewing room, I saw Robert loading his belongings into Sophia's car. She was crying as she stuffed her things into plastic bags, like a refugee fleeing a war. Robert moved like a defeated man. His shoulders slumped, his face the gray of someone who had just lost everything he thought belonged to him. I didn't go down to see them off. There was nothing left to say. 42 years of marriage ended as the last few months had been lived. In silence, with Robert taking what he wanted without asking my opinion. I heard the car's engine fade down the street, and for the first time in decades, my house fell completely silent. There were no voices demanding breakfast, no television blaring, no heavy footsteps demanding attention, just silence. A silence that scared me at first, but slowly transformed into peace. I made myself coffee, but this time, not for 3 people, just for me. I used my favorite mug, the blue ceramic one Robert always criticized because it had a small chip on the handle. I sat in my kitchen chair, unhurried, savoring every sip as I looked out the window at the garden I had neglected for so long. The bougainvillea needed pruning. The pots were full of weeds, but for the first time in years, I had time to fix them. I had time for me. After breakfast, I called Rose. "Helen, how are you? Robert called me. He told me you'd had some trouble." "Robert doesn't live here anymore, Rose." "What do you mean he doesn't live there? Did you two go on a trip?" "No, sis. He's gone for good. He was cheating on me with Sophia, Alex's fiancée." The silence on the other end of the line was long. "Helen, are you sure? Sometimes we can misinterpret." "Rose, I found them in my bed. There is nothing to misinterpret." "Oh my God. Helen, I am so sorry. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "I'm fine, Rose. Better than fine. I'm free." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to Old Town Pasadena alone, not to run errands, not to buy something the family needed, but simply to walk, to remember who Helen had been before she became Robert's wife. I sat on a bench in the park square, across from the church where I had married so many years ago. I remembered the 22-year-old girl who had walked down that aisle in a borrowed white dress, her heart full of dreams, that Helen believed in forever, in eternal love, in promises whispered under candlelight. I didn't regret being that dreamy woman, but I wasn't her anymore. A pigeon landed at my feet, hoping for crumbs I didn't have. I smiled at it. "I'm starting over too, little one," I said. On Saturday morning, Alex knocked on the door. I saw him through the window before opening it. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, son. How are you?" I feel like shit, to be honest. It was the first time Alex had ever sworn in front of me, but strangely, that brutal honesty felt better than years of forced politeness. "Come in. Let's go to the kitchen." I made coffee for both of us. Alex sat in silence, fiddling with his spoon, searching for words. "Mom, did you know? How long did you know about Dad and Sophia?" "For a few weeks. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" Alex lowered his head in shame. "Probably not. I would have thought you were jealous, that you were imagining things. That's why I didn't say anything. It had to come from them. Mom, forgive me. What are you apologizing for?" "For everything. For not defending you when Dad spoke down to you. For asking you for money for the wedding without thinking about what it meant to you. For not seeing what was right in front of my face." Alex began to cry. Not like a grown man, but like the little boy he used to be. The one who would run into my arms when he got hurt at the park. "For treating you like you were invisible," he continued through sobs. "For assuming you'd always be there, no matter how we treated you." I got up and hugged him. feeling his tears soak my blouse. "It's okay, son. It's over now. Do you forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive, Alex. You're my son. I love you unconditionally. But I do deserve to be forgiven. I was a shitty son. You were a son who grew up in a house full of lies. You didn't know what was real and what wasn't." Alex pulled away and looked me in the eyes. "So what now, Mom? What are you going to do?" For the first time in my life, that question didn't scare me. "I'm going to live, son. I'm going to do everything I didn't do for 42 years. Like what? Like travel. I want to see Santa Fe. I want to see the Grand Canyon without having to rush back to make dinner. I want to take painting classes. I always loved to paint, but I never had time." Alex smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Mom, you know what? I'll pay for your trip to Santa Fe. As a freedom gift. You don't have to pay for anything, son." "Yes, I do. I need to start making up for everything I didn't do." That night, after Alex left, I took a long bath with aromatic salts I had bought but never used. I put on the silk pajamas I had been saving for a special occasion that never came. I poured myself a glass of red wine and sat in the living room to watch a romantic movie that Robert had always criticized as corny. The house felt different. It was no longer the stage for a play where I performed the role of the dutiful wife. It was simply my home. On Monday morning, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I went to the art academy near the market. It was an old building with walls covered in student artwork, and it smelled of paint and infinite possibilities. "How can I help you?" a young woman in a paint-splattered apron asked me. "I'd like to sign up for painting classes." "Have you painted before?" "A long time ago, but I want to start again." "Perfect. We have a beginner's course that starts tomorrow. It's Tuesday through Thursday from 10 to noon. Tuesday through Thursday from 10 to noon. A schedule that would have been impossible before, because Robert expected lunch at 2, because I had to go to the market, because the house didn't clean itself. Sign me up. I left the academy with a list of art supplies and an excitement I hadn't felt in decades. It was the thrill of starting something new, of learning, of creating. That afternoon, while sorting through the closet I had shared with Robert for 42 years, I found a box I had forgotten. Inside were my high school paintbrushes, my dry and cracked color palette, and an unfinished canvas I had started 30 years ago. It was a landscape of Lake Arrowhead, with colorful boats gliding across the water between green shores. I had started it after a Sunday trip with Robert, back when we were still happy, when he still looked at me with love. I never finished it because Robert had told me that painting was a waste of time for a married woman. I carried the canvas to the living room and propped it against the wall where our wedding photograph used to hang. Tomorrow I would buy new paints and I would finish it. For the first time in 30 years, I was going to finish something I had started. I took out my notebook and wrote, "Day 10 of my new life. Alex asked for forgiveness, and I gave it. I signed up for painting classes. I found my unfinished canvas. Tomorrow I start completing what I left half done. I have discovered something important. It's not too late to become who I always was on the inside." I closed the notebook and looked out the window at the bougainvillea I had pruned that morning. New flowers were already budding, purple and vibrant, as if they too had been waiting for their moment to be reborn, just like me. 6 months later, I am sitting on the patio of my house, which no longer feels like the house where I suffered for 42 years, but like the home I chose to begin my new life. The bougainvillea I pruned that first day now completely covers the back fence, creating a curtain of purple flowers that moves gently in the October breeze. In my hands, I hold a cup of coffee, made exactly how I like it, without rush, without anyone yelling that it's cold or needs more sugar. Beside me, on the wrought iron table I bought with my first paycheck as a free woman, is my latest painting, a self-portrait I painted in my class with my teacher, Elena. It's not technically perfect, but it's honest. It shows a 64-year-old woman with gray hair she no longer hides, with wrinkles she no longer tries to conceal, with eyes that shine with a peace she had never known. It's the face of Helen Miller, not Robert's wife, not Alex's sacrificial mother, but the woman who chose herself after decades of choosing others. I sold the hardware store in July. Mr. Davis helped me with all the legal paperwork. Robert tried to claim his share, but the documents were clear. He had never been a co-owner of anything. With the money from the sale, I was able to pay off all the debts, completely renovate the house, and still have enough left over to live comfortably without depending on anyone. I replaced the furniture that had witnessed my humiliation. I painted the walls in colors that I liked: sunflower yellow in the kitchen, sky blue in my bedroom, mint green in the living room. Each color was a declaration of independence, a way of erasing the ghosts of the past and creating spaces that reflected my true personality. I turned the sewing room into my art studio. I spend my mornings there, painting landscapes of the places I visited. The mountains of Santa Fe, where I went in September and tried authentic Southwestern cuisine for the first time without having to rush home. The Grand Canyon, where I climbed to a viewpoint feeling as though I too was ascending to a new version of myself. The historic streets of Old Missions, where I bought colorful local crafts and took pictures of myself smiling, a real smile. Alex comes to visit me every Sunday. At first, he would come weighed down by guilt, trying to make up for years of indifference with expensive gifts and exaggerated attention. I had to teach him that I didn't need his guilt, just his sincere love. Now our visits are natural, relaxed. We cook together. He tells me about his work. He asks for my advice on his love life. Yes, he's dating someone new, Anna, a doctor he met at the gym who treats me with the respect I deserve when she comes to the house. "Mom," he said to me last week as we were cooking together, "you have no idea how good it is to see you like this. You seem like a different person." "I'm not a different person, son. I'm the same one I've always been. I just finally allow myself to be me." "Don't you miss anything from before?" "I miss the father I thought you had. I miss the family I thought we were. But I don't miss the lie." Robert tried to come back twice. The first time was in May, when he showed up at my door at 11 at night, drunk and crying, swearing it had been a temporary madness, that Sophia meant nothing, that he loved me, and we could start over. I listened to him calmly, made him some coffee to sober him up, and then told him plainly that there was no going back. That respect, once lost, cannot be recovered with tears or promises. The second time was in August, when he found out I had sold the hardware store. He arrived furious, yelling that I had no right, that he had worked there for years. That time, I didn't let him in. I spoke to him from the window, legal documents in hand, reminding him that nothing he was claiming had ever been his. He left shouting empty threats that the wind carried away, along with the last vestiges of the power he thought he had over me. I learned from Alex that Robert and Sophia barely lasted 3 months together. Apparently, the passion that united them evaporated when they had to face the reality of paying rent, splitting bills, and building a real life outside the fantasy of stealing forbidden moments in someone else's house. Sophia ended up moving back with her parents to Arizona, and Robert now lives in a small apartment over in Van Nuys, working as an employee in a hardware store that isn't his. I don't feel sorry for him. For 42 years, I lived with the consequences of his decisions. Now it's his turn to live with the consequences of his own. Last week, while walking through the Pasadena farmers market buying ingredients for a dinner I was making just for myself, I ran into Rose. My sister looked me up and down, noticing my new haircut, my colorful blouse, my comfortable but nice shoes. "Helen, you look different." "I look happy, Rose. Don't you feel lonely?" "Do you know the difference between being alone and feeling lonely?" I asked her. I was with someone for 42 years, and I felt profoundly lonely. Now I am physically alone and I feel completely accompanied. I have my own company. Rose looked at me, not quite understanding, but she nodded. "Well, if you're okay." "I'm more than okay, sis. I'm alive." This morning, as I was watering the plants in my garden, which now blossoms in all its glory, the mailman arrived with a letter. It was from an art gallery in the LA Arts District, inviting me to exhibit 3 of my paintings in a group show for emerging artists. I laughed when I read emerging artists applied to a 64-year-old woman, but then I thought that maybe that's exactly what I was. A new talent. An artist who had been born from the ashes of a submissive wife. I'm going to participate in the exhibition. I'm going to hang my paintings on a wall where other people will see them, judge them, maybe even buy them. A year ago, the idea would have terrified me. Today, it excites me. Because I've learned something fundamental. The fear of others' judgment is the price we pay for living lives that are not our own. When I finally decided to live my life, the judgment of others lost all its power over me. Last night, as I ate dinner in my dining room, lit by candles I lit just because I like how the light dances on the walls, I thought of all the women who might be going through what I went through. Women who get up every day to serve families who take them for granted, who sacrifice themselves until they disappear, who believe that love is demonstrated through total self-denial. I want to tell them that they are wrong, that true love never asks you to erase yourself so that others can shine, that respect isn't earned with submission, but demanded with dignity, that it is never, ever too late to choose yourself. For years, I believed my worth depended on how useful I was to others. Now I know that my worth exists simply because I exist. I don't have to earn it, or prove it, or justify it. I simply have to honor it. The sun is setting behind the bougainvillea, painting the sky orange and pink. Colors I never allowed myself to use in my paintings before because Robert said they were too feminine. Now I paint with all the colors that exist, especially those he considered inappropriate. I look at my house, with its freshly painted walls, its flourishing plants, its corners filled with my things, my books, my paintings, my dreams made real. It's not a perfect house, but it's honest, like me. In my notebook, I write the final entry. Day 183 of my new life. Today, I understood that I'm not starting a new life. I am continuing the one that was always mine, but which I had put on pause for 42 years. The end of my marriage wasn't a loss. It was a homecoming, a return to myself. Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Have you known someone who lost so much of themselves trying to please others? Tell me in the comments if this story sounds familiar to you, and if anything I shared today resonates in your heart. If you think someone else needs to hear that it's never too late to choose yourself, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, because these stories need to reach the people who need to hear them most. Freedom has no age. Respect is non-negotiable, and your happiness cannot depend on anyone but you.